Considered the world's last frontier, the Pacific, which consists of 25,000 islands, have often been at the tail end of global development. However, when it comes to the impacts, these islands have been at the forefront of rising sea levels and harsh climatic conditions, and they pay the highest energy prices in the world. In 2016, 12 Pacific nations joined more than 160 other countries in signing the historic Paris Agreement, the climate treaty calling for drastic cuts in greenhouse emissions. According to the United Nations, energy is the major contributor to climate change, accounting for around 60% of total global greenhouse gas emissions. And reducing the carbon intensity of energy is a key objective in long-term climate goals. Given the growing importance of energy for economic development and climate change mitigation, the Framework for Action on Energy Security in the Pacific, FAESP, was adopted in 2010. In 2011, the Sustainable Energy for All initiative was launched, and the United Nations designated 2014 to 2024 as the Decade of Sustainable Energy for All, or C for All. This initiative has three interrelated targets of ensuring universal access to modern energy services, doubling the rate of improvement in energy efficiency, and doubling the share of renewable energy in the global energy mix. In 2013, at the Pacific Leaders Energy Summit, the hosts and Tongan government pushed for the establishment of the Pacific Regional Data Repository, or PRDR.
At the end of that meeting, the leaders identified absence of reliable energy information and data as a key barrier to the advancement of the energy sector. And so they came up with this initiative, the Pacific Regional Data Repository. It's supposed to be a one-stop shop for energy data and information, so that anyone within the countries and within the region, external stakeholders, development partners, who wants to know and who wants to get information about the energy sector of the Pacific Island countries can go to this the Pacific Regional Data Repository.
Through the successful leadership efforts of the Government of Tonga and the support of the United Nations Economic and Social Commission of Asia and the Pacific, UNESCAP, 11 Pacific countries signed on to the declaration of the PRDR at the margins of the United Nations General Assembly in September 2013. In 2014, at the second combined joint meeting of the Transport and Energy Ministers in Fiji, the Pacific Community, or SPC, was nominated by member countries to develop the PRDR and host it on an interim basis. Later that year, SPC officially launched the PRDR at the third United Nations Small Islands Developing States SIDS conference in Samoa as a fine example of a partnership to address the sustainable development challenges of the Pacific SIDS.
The innovation, I would call it, of the Pacific Regional Data Repository in support of Sustainable Energy for All initiative is an online energy database of both raw and processed data that is intended to be user-friendly, accurate and comprehensive. Our role as SCAP in this process of development of PRDR has been to facilitate process in the early stages, making use of an ongoing project on energy affordability and South-South cooperation.
In September 2015, Pacific Energy Ministers, in recognition of SPC's technical capacity and commitments, agreed for SPC to become the permanent host of the PRDR. The World Bank is a key partner in strengthening the development of the PRDR, supporting the initial funding from the Australian government in the design and setup of the online portal.
All of the countries in the Pacific need to have more reliable, updated, sustainable data available for their own energy sector development, and at the same time, if they're seeking for financing from development partners, from private sector, you need data for that purpose. Those national priorities then turn into a regional priority, and therefore I think it's a very good aggregation of that. At the same time, you know that some countries in the Pacific don't have a specific websites where to find the data. So the PRDR in itself also constitutes or provide that window or that sort of space where to show and make the data available for those countries.
The PRDR stores 4 sectors of data, and they include utility, petroleum and transport, renewable energy project data, and social economic data. An important aspect of Pacific countries' sustainable energy development plans and roadmaps is they have set timelines for achieving their sustainable energy goals and targets. But in order to do that, reliable data and information are needed to enable leaders to make informed decisions, formulate effective policies, and replicate best practices. The Pacific Regional Data Repository, or PRDR, provides the perfect platform for that.
Often we find that we do the same thing over and over again because we don't have data. We don't have the sufficient data in place, and so the PRDR is a platform where you get to learn what others are doing. Like some of the things that in Vanuatu that we plan to do, it has been done elsewhere, especially in the Pacific. And instead of reinventing the wheel, doing the same thing over and over again, you can just tap into that website and extract whatever you want from there.
Pacific Regional Data Repository has been very useful so far in Samoa, especially for our data collection. And this data will be more accessible for our energy stakeholders, and it's like a one-stop shop for data providers. So for us, our energy departments, we always prepare and compile annual energy review reports. And this data from our energy data providers, it needs to be available for us to access. So PRDR, it's been very useful so far in Samoa.
IRENA has its own global atlas, and we look at international information of all the different regions like Pacific, Africa, Caribbean, and Indian Ocean. So we cover those areas, but in terms of the Pacific, we know that PRDR exists, and we would like to partner up with SPC in sharing our information of renewable energy so that we can assist the countries according to what their needs are, rather than duplicating their efforts and trying to do the same thing in the region.
Through the Government of Tonga and the Pacific Leaders' vision, the Pacific Regional Data Repository setup not only facilitates the region's collective goal towards sustainable energy, but more importantly, helps to fast-track it.